to this meeting of the Cabinet. My name is Councillor Sarah King and I'm the chair of this meeting and leader of the council. This meeting has been held in person, but it's also being live streamed on Southwark Council's YouTube channel. I would like to welcome members of the Cabinet to the meeting, and I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and your portfolios.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Evelyn Okoto, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing.
Everyone, Councillor John Batson, Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, Jobs and Business.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Stephanie Cryan, Cabinet Member for Policies, Democracy and Finance.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Michael Shitu, Cabinet Member for Council Homes.
Afternoon, my name is Councillor Helen Dennis and I'm Cabinet Member for New Homes and Sustainable Development.
Thank you. So council officers will be in attendance throughout the meeting and will introduce themselves as they come up to present reports, but I'm going to ask the top to introduce themselves first. Virginia Wynne-Jones.
Good afternoon, Althea Loderick, Council's Chief Executive.
Good afternoon, Sarah Busey, Head of Dawn Officer.
Thank you. So I have a few announcements to make before we get going with the main agenda. Please could everyone switch your mobile phones to silent whilst you're in the meeting. Please note that filming and recording are permitted at our council meetings and that this is also being live streamed. So I have 3 apologies from Cabinet members today. That's Councillor Jasmine Ali, who is attending an event in the south of the borough for Charterbury School. And I have apologies from Councillor Natasha Enin and Councillor James McCash. We have no urgent items today. I just want to update that we have 2 closed items later on in the agenda. And that no representations have been received for them. They are the Asylum Road Care Home disposal of the site with the selected party to deliver and operate a new care home, and the Wyndham Road Camberwell letting of an underground former garage space. It's sometimes necessary to include confidential information in the closed reports that might relate to individuals or specific contracts. However, please be aware that open versions of these reports are available at the meeting. Does anyone have a disclosable pecuniary interest or a dispensation they wish to make? Councillor Cryan.
It is not disclosed pecuniary interest, but the age-friendly report mentions Rob Rice Consolidated Charities in Appendix 4, and I'm a trustee and vice chair of Rob Rice Consolidated. It doesn't preclude me from making.
Thank you very much. Any others? Okay. So we have received no requests for public questions or deputations, so we'll move on to the minutes. Can we agree that there were correct record of the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 16th of September 2020? Thank you. So the first main item up is our age-friendly borough initiative, which is set out in starts in page 26 with the recommendations in page 27 and 28. This will be presented by Councillor Okoto. Do you have officers with you?
Yeah, Katie, do you want to come? Do we invite Steve and the team?
Steve and the team, would you like to join at this stage
as well?
We can do it in 2 seconds.
Right. So I'm really happy to begin this cabinet meeting with this important piece of work and report. Southwark older population is growing and is growing fast. And we estimate that by 2040, 1 in 6 of our residents will be over the age of 65. And in a borough that ranks among the most deprived in England, we know too often that older people still face poorer health, shorter lives, and barriers to the care and dignity they deserve. And I think that's why age friendliness and the work we're doing is going to be really important, not just for now, but for future services. And it's not just about services, it's about values as well. And it's about recognizing our older residents and how they have shaped our community. And it's important that we listen and allow them to shape the environment and, help us shape Southwark going forward. We've made real progress. I'm really happy with the work we've done so far. And I want to thank Steve and others that I see Kathleen and Cedric at the back that have been involved and taking part and encouraging people to attend the meetings. We've done so much extra care housing, warm spaces, which we're launching this winter. We're launched already. We're about to launch. About to pension poverty, to name a few. But being age friendly is not a badge, and it shouldn't be a badge. It's about a way of working. To request is a request to establish a cross-council officer working group to coordinate internal delivery of the age-friendly Southwark initiative, and it's about aligning departmental activity. One thing we don't want to do, and I remember discussing this with Steve, is about silo working, because once we start silo working, it never embeds, and before we know it, we've forgotten what we've started. So I mean, that's a really important recommendation. Recommendation 3 is to endorse the continued role of the Older Persons Age Friendly Forum as a standing advisory group of older residents. Now, I want to thank every older resident that have attended this group, and Katie, for leading on this, because we've had a lot of invaluable discussions here, and a lot of some of the things that have been said is going to feed into the older people housing strategy as well. So I want to thank them for that. Recommendation 3 is asking us to improve and support raising the profile of the program to establish age-friendly approaches as a corporate priority. I think this is what a lot of residents that have come to our meeting have spoken about. How do we make sure that this is a priority for us? And recommendation 3 endorses the establishment of a 50,000 budget for communication and ongoing campaigns targeted with older people to co-produce some of the services that we want to implement. So I want to leave it there. And I want to say that together, these steps will help make Southwark a borough that not only supports older people, but truly celebrates them. So thank you for all the work you've done so far.
Thank you so much, Councillor Koto, and for just always championing this work. We really appreciate your support. And I just wanted to emphasise that this has been a really, truly collaborative journey. Over the last couple of years, we've spoken with hundreds of older residents, carers, and people working in local services, and it's their insight that has shaped every part of this work. Everything we're taking forward comes directly from the conversations and consultations that we've been having. With Cabinet support, we've now got the platform to make sure that age friendliness is built into everything we do across the council, building from its base in the corporate centre, which I think is really important. And over the next few months, as Councillor Koto mentioned, we'll be focusing on visibility, showing residents what age-friendly Southwark looks like in action, and celebrating the great work already happening across the borough. And we'll be updating the Age Friendly Forum next Tuesday about the outcome of Cabinet and also the next steps. And it's a really important way to keep the residents at the heart of the work and make sure that we're kind of up to date with the issues that are most pressing to them. And it's really exciting and great to see the momentum building with so many strong partnerships with our BCS, and building kind of strengthening relationships with our residents. And I just want to say that in a very early meeting that I had with Kathy Duplessis, who's sitting back there, who's the director of Southwark Pensioners Centre, she told me that if we make the borough a better place for older people, in turn we make it better for everyone. And I've really taken that to heart and believe that to be true. So I welcome Cabinet members' help in keeping the focus on older people alive, and by using an age-friendly lens in all of your portfolios, and endorsing the ongoing progression of this work.
Thank you very much. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself, and your contributions on the report would be brilliant. But before you do so, I just want to say a huge thank you to you and to Kathy and the rest of the team, both at the Southwark Pension Centre, for what you're delivering in conjunction with us and separately, but also for the challenge that you give us to be better.
I'm Steve Lancashire. I've lived and worked in Southwark for the best part of 50 years, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to now comment on this report. For the last 2 or 3 years, I've become the chair of the steering group of the Age Friendly Initiative, which Southwark resurrected about 3 or 4 years ago, having been involved with it about 10 or 15 years ago when it was first introduced. So thanks for the opportunity to comment. I certainly share a lot of what's already been said by Councillor Koto and Katie. I just wanted to highlight the first paragraph in this report, which says we've always been at the heart, older people have always been at the heart Well, I'm sorry to say that a conversation I had at the beginning of the year with the previous leader of this council, I had to show to him that we weren't at the heart, because the 2030 document that you've all endorsed had not one single reference to older people in it. And I'm delighted that since then, and since Karen listened very carefully, and I think Sarah has since, I'm much more hopeful that it is part of, and everything that you've got in 2030 should also include what's in this report and the work that's going on in age-friendly things. The second thing I want to say is that I think we've made a really good and hopeful start on this initiative now, and embedded it in a way that 10 or 15 years ago it wasn't embedded in the council's work. But there is still a long way to go. I think like Evelyn, I share a lot of her restlessness. It would be great if Southwark was an age-friendly borough tomorrow, but it ain't. And there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of work being done by council officers, by cabinet members, I think, and also by the community and voluntary sector. And we have to build on that. We've got the beginnings of a structure which is still quite fragile, still quite dynamic, and still needs to be embedded. That's the steering group, the working groups that Katie has created based on her consultation, and then a system of feedback directly to older people. The second one will happen next week in this building, of what's known as the age-friendly older people's. And I suppose what I want to particularly highlight about the recommendations is that this isn't just, in my view, a programme that is led by adult social care. It's a programme that every cabinet member around this table, and those that aren't here today, have some responsibility for, as does every council officer at all levels. So this isn't to be parcelled off into the community engagement team and elsewhere. All of you have got to think carefully about what you can do in your respective portfolios to make this borough an age-friendly borough. And in that context, the specific stuff at the moment, I think, is we've got to make sure that all the working groups, which is a real potential of being a co-production exercise between residents, between health officers, Transport for London officers, council officers, and all 63 council members, that's a real co-production exercise. Easy to say, enormously challenging to do, not least because of a recognition of the financial challenges and time challenges that all of you in the council at every level have upon you. So that structure is still getting embedded, and we will continue to embed it over the coming years. I've met some fantastic officers for the first time, both in community housing, community engagement, housing, transport, who've shown a great deal of commitment and imagination. And most importantly, they've listened to what the importance of the resident voice. And I hope I'm very hopeful that will continue to happen. In terms of the recommendations and the reasons for it, I suppose it's perhaps inevitable that somebody like me would say, I understand about your financial challenges, but 50,000 is barely going to touch the surface. You have to find other ways, with all the challenges you've got, of looking at how we might create an age-friendly, brand doesn't feel the right word, but I can't think of a better one at the moment. So that work out there in the community and voluntary sector, in your respective departments, is done holistically. And of course, doing that cross-departmental stuff and not being in your respective bunkers, to build up relationships between officers and members and the local community takes time. You will know better than I, because of what lands on your desks, how much older people in particular, but other people, feel like they're broken records. They've been going on about things, whether it's in housing, whether it's in transport and so on, or whether it's in resident engagement. The importance of communicating clearly and giving feedback. Absolutely essential that you don't ignore all people, particularly older people, because of the wisdom and experience they bring. And if you can't do it, tell us. let's have some clear cut rather than retreat into a bunker and pretend we're not there. I think that's really important. So I'm hoping, and I feel very hopeful, that this is the beginning, not least because of the investment you've made in the past year in the Southwark Pensioners Centre, and using that, which will become in the next 9 months to a year. Some people think it's going to happen in the summer. Knowing what I know about building works, I'm not quite sure it'll happen that quickly. Anyway, whenever it happens, it's going to be fantastic, and I'm really grateful. And it does reflect, I think, enormous commitment that the council has found significant resources to develop that as a hub for the borough in a really, really key location. So in terms of the action plan and so on that's here, and this inter-officer group, I hope that in the recommendations, the group, which sounds great at one level, but I just need to highlight that there's been work going on for the last three years or so with officers and local residents and the community and voluntary sector. And I hope that the group that's in the recommendation learns from that. The final thing I think I want to just highlight is another fantastic thing, and I'm really proud of this borough, about the network of leisure centres and libraries you've got in. Just knowing what I've known that's happened elsewhere and in London and around the country where I've had some contact, we've got the most fantastic network that you could call community hubs that will work alongside the community and voluntary sector community hubs. So I'm really keen. I personally, with a small group of people, have really benefited from working for, not on older people's work, but on campaigning work, getting a campaigning exhibition around all the libraries, and it's going to go to Canada Water in December, called SE1 Stories. And the way officers have dealt with me on that and been very welcoming and cooperative, both in libraries and leisure centres, has been a joy to behold. And that's a testimony, I think, about bringing things back in-house. So one of the key things, and I'll finish on this because it's the next item on your agenda and you want to get to it, is I'm bound to say that some older people that I'm connected with were very disappointed that both adult social care officers and planning officers led your planning committee to turn down or not deal with the questions of the design of Love Walk dementia care home that's now been passed and so on. And I hope that when you look at Asylum Road, you will see the work that people from Southwark Pensioners Action Group and others have done, saying, "Oi, you've got to think about the design. You really care about vulnerable older people. You've got to give a lot more attention than you did on Love Walk." I know it's an expensive job to the Asylum Road site. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Steve and Katie. Does anyone have any questions or comments they would like to make?
Thank you very much for speaking on the age-friendly borough initiative. I think it's absolutely crucial about how we bring together kind of the work we do within the council, different departments, but also with our partners itself. And one of the key things you've also mentioned, Steve, is in terms of how we have a kind of almost like a community hub approach, whereby actually older people from any part of the borough can really kind of tap into both resources and activities and also engagement. And I guess it would be useful to hear both of your thoughts about how you think we can build in kind of the community hub we have within our housing services, namely tenants and residents association halls, how you think we can build that into a strong kind of network of hubs together with what we have within the council to ensure that we deliver more for our older people.
Thank you. I think that's really important. And I guess it's almost like talking about the 15-minute. You know, you can have a borough-wide strategy that actually have hubs like libraries, leisure centres, housing offices that within 15 minutes. And one of the key things that we've been on about for some time now is what we call digital exclusion. That it in the next 20 years, if we live in a dynamic world, a lot of that may change, but to have walk-in places clearly accessible, like libraries and housing offices. So I think if you, and particularly when you think of how large a council housing stock we've got, and what some people are experiencing as older council tenants, and how we can do that. And I suppose in terms of making those physical spaces welcoming in some way and looking and giving staff training, although I've gone wax lyrical about libraries, one of the disappointing things, I'm sorry to say, when I was a secret shopper, when this wonderful directory, printed directory, rather than doing it all online, was produced and was distributed around the libraries about a year, 2 years ago. I did a secret shopping at 2 of my LIFO libraries, and the receptionist didn't have a clue what I was talking about, and they were in brown boxes in the back. So the devil's always in the detail. And I think we'd be really open, particularly in the housing working group, that have the relevant council housing officers come, because all the working groups are reviewing their terms of reference. And it will be really good to have some of that housing team in the room saying this, because when we've had the transport team in the room, it's been fantastic. People I'd never met before coming up with all sorts of, oh, let's do it this way, or communicate it that way. So we'll talk and we'll build on it. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Mwanje. Apologies for lateness. First of all, thank you about the libraries and leisure services. Very, very happy to hear that. And in terms of the report, this is just something outside of it. I want to know what, as the cabinet member for young people, I want to know how we can work together to basically have that generational link. There's a lot of work that we're doing with our young people, and for young people and old people to be at the heart of what we're doing, it would be good to see how we can make that connection. There's some great stuff happening in South Bermondsey. I can't remember what the building is called. It's completely left my mind, but there was some Appleby Blue. There's some great stuff that's happening with primary schools and that establishment, and I think that is great initiatives. But I think that there's stuff that we can do beyond that. So stuff in our parks, in our leisure centres, fitness classes that we could do to bring the generations together. And I think that could be a very big testament. I don't see a lot of other local councils doing that, so it'd be really good to see how we can start something around that area.
Hiya, yeah, I completely agree, and it was definitely something that came out really strongly in the consultation that we had back in 2023, is that there was a real desire for that kind of intergenerational crossover and creating opportunities to bring people of different ages together to kind of like learn together, have fun together, share and exchange skills. So I think that's definitely something that we'll be looking at, kind of how kind of exploring and looking for spaces where we can kind of create opportunities for that to happen. But it's a definite desire from older people. It's come up loads. People talk about it loads, especially around things like digital skill sharing. So a lot of people kind of suggested like skill shares, where, you know, some of the skills that are getting lost with younger people around like cooking or sewing or kind of these things that older people kind of have, and exchanging that for things like show me how to use my smartphone, and kind of creating those kind of spaces to have fun and learn together. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I started my working life in this borough after graduating. I was brought up in the borough as well, but as a youth and community worker at Blackfriars, and over the next 20 years, I ended up being the youth officer for the Inner London Education Authority. When there was a significant budget, we had never thought there was enough, but there was, compared to what you've got now, it was very significant indeed. So I'm again aware of the financial challenges, and I'm not so up to date on where those exciting things are. Mentivity looks exciting. Potential of Appleby Blue is mentioned, but we've got to do more than just, you know, it's got to be borough, and we've got to find ways, particularly when you think about the more vulnerable young people, and I think the more vulnerable older. The intergenerational work is a fantastic option. So again, I'm sure the relevant groups, working groups in Age Friendly, develop that. Very good to hear that commitment.
Thank you. Katie and Steve, thank you for your enthusiasm in terms of how you've talked through the report and the work that you've both been doing in terms of supporting it. Steve, I was particularly keen, it's wonderful that you mentioned some of the really positive stuff that the council is doing in terms of leisures and libraries, as well as give us that right needed challenge. I think the points you make about this is the start of embedding it is a very, very powerful one. And I think it's something that we've all heard loud and clear in terms of, despite our funding challenges and ones that could get more significant going forward, that we need to be looking at it in all of our respective roles. So I hope you will keep telling us how we're doing.
Yes, I'm sure he will.
I know.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
So we're now ready to consider the recommendations on this item. Are we all in agreement to recommendations 1 to 9 on page 27 to 28? Thank you. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is the Asylum Road Care Home disposal of the site by the way of a long-term leasehold interest with a selected party to deliver and operate a new care home at Asylum Road. This is Councillor Dennis's report. I'd be grateful if you could introduce, and then if officers could introduce themselves as well. Sorry, it's both of you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a joint report from Councillor Dennis and Councillor Okoto.
I think Councillor Okoto is going to kick off. In terms of
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the presentation, well, for introducing it. And this follows smoothly on from the previous report. And obviously, we've already established that we are an aging population. And when we talk about nursing homes, what we have found that actually, unfortunately, we are growing older, but with more complex health needs. And the council predicts demand for nursing homes to rise by 32% by 2034. That's 9 years away, so it's not very far away. And we have to urgently future-proof this scenario. Our latest nursing care beds assessment, which is in Appendix 2, provides a detailed breakdown if anyone wants to have a further look. But at this moment, we simply don't have enough capacity within Southwark. And so this means that many of our residents are being placed outside of the borough, far from families and the support networks around them. And it also puts pressure on our hospitals because people are waiting longer to be able to be discharged into a more suitable placement. This report sets out a proposal that will change that, and I recommend it to Cabinet. I'm taking my time because I want to also acknowledge a recent email sent by Health Scrutiny, which outlined a few areas of concerns, and myself and Helen will be responding in full. And we also have a meeting with the Health Scrutiny this week. I want to recognise the scrutiny that went into these proposals and really making sure that we're getting this right. But I think I have to emphasise that we all want the same thing, which is a safe, high-quality care for Southwark residents. I also want to emphasise that this is not make a decision today and then we walk away. Cabinet will see the contractual safeguards before any final signing off is done. So the right oversight, I believe, is there. The decision is about planning ahead and making sure that, we don't get to a point in 9 years' time where actually we are still struggling with the number of beds within the borough, and making sure that we have the right care in place for our residents now and in the future. And I hand over to Helen.
Thanks very much. So this is a joint report because, as Councillor Okoto has explained, we are obviously very focused on the actual outcome, which is securing more in-borough beds for Southwark residents who are in need. But in approaching this, we've had to look at how to best deliver this to provide not just the best outcome possible for residents, but also good value for the council. It's also accompanied by a closed report, which we will discuss in closed session later. So the team, in conjunction with Adult Social Care, put in place a process earlier this year to explore whether we might be able to deliver a nursing home on the Asylum Road site, which had already been allocated for a nursing home, and to deliver it via a land transaction. And they can maybe explain that in a bit more detail. We went out to the market to see what interest there was and what might be possible. And we had a number of interesting bids that came back. And there was a team across, again, both departments, so planning and growth and adult social care, that looked to assess the bids.
focused on both quality of care and also the outcome for the council in terms of value for money. And that was not just about looking at an immediate land receipt, but it was also looking at the kind of longer term offer for adult social care in terms of the beds that we would have nominations to and for discounted rates. So we came to look at a number of those offers and unanimously the team who were involved in that proposed that we move forward with a conditional land disposal to Andover, which is set out in the open reports. And there is further details about Andover as an organisation who are a family-run business. There is, I think, a slight amendment which is proposed just to take account of the most recent CQC report on one of the care homes, just to clarify that the recent rating on that is good rather than outstanding. But we will obviously continue, if this, subject to this all going ahead, to work with Andover to ensure the highest quality of standards in our borough. I don't know if Catherine or Mark want to say anything more about the process and how we've got to this point.
Hi, good afternoon. Stephen Platt, Director of Planning Grove. I would just stress really at this point, we are selecting a partner to work with over the next years, and we hope would be a fantastic new home for suburb. So the key element for me is actually the partner, and I'm going to outline some of the due diligence we've undertaken in relation to that selection, and the confidence we have working with them and over to deliver a high quality home. There's two elements really. The council, I suppose, have two hats that we serve in this regard. We have our hat, if you like, as landowner and the arrangements to live in the nursing home, but we also have our statutory responsibility as statutory planning authority. Just a bit of general information really following the last item as well. We will be starting preparation of a new plan next year. One of the key elements I want my team to focus on is to strengthen our policy around older people, and particularly housing around old people. So that's something we're looking at as part of the development of a new plan, which is in the so it's an area of work we'll be focused on next year as we develop. Catherine, do you want to say anything about our partners?
Hi, Catherine Brownell from Sustainable Growth North, head of. So we've proceeded with a lot of due diligence on this. We set up a steering group as set in the report. That was cross-departmental, as Councillor Dennis has said, with
Apologies. Could you talk, maybe move the microphone closer so people behind us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's cross-departmental with ourselves we've got the head of property on the panel, myself that has design background looking at the design aspect, and also working with senior personnel in adult social care. So that cross-departmental view was there from the beginning in terms of all the stages of going out to the market, seeing what came back, and then interviewing the interested potential partners, which we did. A couple of them, we interviewed them twice. Not all of them had a care home for us to visit, so two of them had care homes for us to visit and offered us to visit. One of those partners we already know very well, and we visit regularly. Adult social care visits them regularly. So we undertook a specific visit to Andover. So through all that process, we were all very impressed with what we saw at Andover. That was the St Albans care home site. We all scored and ranked the bidders individually. We've got all that data, and the summary table is what is in the open report. And there was unanimous view for them as the first ranking offer. Interestingly, there was a difference of view across the steering group, the evaluation panel, on some of the other ones. So it was, we weren't all aligned on everything, but there was alignment on that first ranking offer.
Thank you. Mark, did you want to add on
Just a very brief thing. I think also we were advised by independent chartered surveyors Jones Lang LaSalle, who have a specialist care home team, and so they went through the market in depth to test the market and then elucidate the odds. So I think it was very well exposed to the market and all the various different operators that were there. So I think actually the results that we drew are very, very exciting.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Crine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think in light of Councillor Koto's introduction around, and she mentioned around the health and social care scrutiny in the email that they sent in their sort of questions that they were asking, that I'd like to propose three further recommendations to strengthen the report and to sort of support what they were saying with that. And I think Councillor Shittu is going to kindly second that as well. So the further recommendations that I think we'd like to put forward is that Cabinet, one, note that further feedback from the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Commission meeting scheduled for Thursday, the 16th of October 2025, would be taken into account during the lease negotiation stage of handover. The next one is to note that Planning and Growth would explore options for appointing the Dementia Services Development Centre at the University of Stirling as sector specialists to comment on the proposed design at the appropriate time. And the last recommendation is to note that with reference to paragraph 23 of the open report, the Andover Nursing Home has now been rated good by CQC, and that was on 4th of September this year.
Thank you.
I think I'll throw my second there.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to make any comments or questions either about the substantive report or the amendment proposed by Steph and Mark? I'm now going to ask for some constitutional advice. And does anyone have any questions before we go to vote on the amendment? Okay. So can we agree the amendment as proposed by Councillor Crine and Councillor Michaelson? Agreed. Because this report is also being considered in closed session, we will take the revised amendments in the closed session towards the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're going to move on to agenda item 10, which is the adoption of climate and environmental supplementary planning document. Councillor Dennis is going to introduce this one too.
Thanks, and also joined by Juliet and Charlotte as well from Planning Policy, who've been working on this. So this is the kind of final version for adoption of the climate and environment supplementary planning document, which is guidance to support implementation of the current Southwark plan, and it endeavours essentially to provide additional guidance and really support and strengthen the work on climate environment within planning. Even today, there's been news about flood risk across the capital and in Southwark, really highlighting particularly the risks around the Thames, but also surface water flooding as well across kind of dense urban areas. So really important that those issues are addressed in the built environment, and the SPD and some of the amendments that have been made through the consultation deal with aspects like flood risk and strengthening, clarifying issues in relation to that section, as well as biodiversity, the addition of a whole section on food growing spaces as well within the SPD, and further guidance on retrofit and refurbishment. So it's been quite a long exercise because obviously this came originally to Cabinet before we went out to consultation. But I do want to thank everybody who has taken the time to respond and to strengthen this document, and to the officers as well who've worked on getting us to this point.
Thank you. Would you like to add, Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Charlotte Brooks-Laurie, Head of Planning Policy. Really just to sort of emphasise that it's very much across council sort of collaboration. We've engaged with many different teams across the council, including, environmental protection. There's a section in there on air quality. So this really is bringing together a whole range of climate and environment guidance, both existing guidance, which the council has that perhaps sits in other teams, bringing it together into one place. And it's also very much picking up on the themes from environment scrutiny, so things such as nature corridors and biodiversity and the corporate biodiversity duty which the council has. So I think really the intention here is that it's a really sort of one-stop shop for applications to make sure that we can maintain the quality planning application coming forward and really assist and be very clear with developers and applicants what we expect to see in those planning applications. And finally, just to say that once the SPDs are adopted, we are now embarking on the local plan process. So it's the opportunity to review all of the policies which are signposted in this SPD and make them even stronger. So it's very much an ongoing effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. So are we happy to agree the recommendations of this item, which is set out on page 95? Agreed? Thank you. So next up is agenda item 11, revised community infrastructure levy charging schedule on student infrastructure levy. Councillor Dennis.
Team. So I'm really pleased that we've got to this point on this report, because it has public planning policy takes a while and it's taken a while to kind of get to this point. We started this process last year to review our student SIL rates, really recognising that we've had an uptick in the number of student accommodation applications coming through the planning system. And whilst in some ways that's understandable, we have lots of really fantastic higher education, further education institutions in the borough and around. At the same time, we still have very pressing need for family homes as well. And what we don't want to be doing is kind of incentivising inadvertently student accommodation over and above other forms of housing in the borough, but also ensuring that student accommodation does make its fair contribution towards infrastructure needs in the borough. So I'm really glad that we're in this place today where we'll be going out to consultation on increasing the student SIL rates to a borough-wide rate of £250 per square metre. This is based on viability testing, and it's really important that all new planning policy is viability tested, because it ultimately has to go to the planning inspector. What we don't want to be doing, and obviously at the moment it's well documented that there are lots of challenges in viability and construction across the capital. So we don't want to be unnecessarily deterring development. We need to kind of hit the right spot between making sure that student accommodation in this case is paying its way, but at the same time that we are not putting off development from taking place. So the viability testing that was undertaken for this recommended this rate of £250 per metre squared, which represents a 70% increase in SIL for direct let student schemes in the borough, an average of 3.8%, I think, in terms of their development costs. So I think it gets us into a much better place. It still now has to go out to public consultation and then go to the planning inspector. So it's not a kind of done and dusted deal. But I'm pleased that we've got to the point where we can hopefully see an increased contribution from student schemes that are coming forward in the borough.
Thank you. Anything to add? Any questions or comments? Just going to say it's a really welcome development. I know it is something that is some time in the making, due to that's how we have to work through planning policy, but I think it's something that has been raised with all of us by residents as a concern in terms of affordable housing. I was just wondering if there's anything you can say about the next stages of the process in terms of consultation and going to the planning inspectorate, and whether how we think that process will run.
Thank you. Charlotte Brooks-Laurie, Head of Planning Policy. The next step is to go out for a 3-month consultation period. That is in line with the Council's statement of community involvement. We have already got everything prepared for that on Council Consultation Hub, and we will follow the usual methods, obviously email, notifications in libraries, etc. We anticipate that the target audience of the consultation will only be developers, but we are including obviously a non-technical summary so that anybody can obviously participate in that consultation and provide comments and additional evidence.
So following the 3-month consultation process, we will be reviewing every response that comes in. They're likely to be quite technical, so we will be taking advice from the same viability consultants to ensure that we review those correctly. There will then be a consultation response document which is submitted to the inspectorate following the election period. So we're looking at around sort of early June of next year. The examination period, it can actually occur within the space of a day. We are looking here at just a focused change to the seal charging schedule as opposed to a review of all of the topologies on the seal charging schedule. So that can be accommodated by the inspector fairly quickly. He will hear evidence from any members, the public or developers who want to provide evidence, and all of that will be taken into account. There will be a final report from the inspector with a recommendation, and then that recommendation will be going back to Cabinet for approval. So by the end of next year, we would expect to have an approved seal charge, which can then be included on the revised seal charging schedule from the 1st of January 2027. So all being well, and we have confidence in the study that we have, that it's a fair and reasonable approach, been viability tested against a wide range of typologies and values. We have confidence in that report. So all being well, 1st of January 27, that rate will be in place. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll move on to consider the recommendations. Are we all in agreement on the recommendations as set out on page 106? Agreed. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item number 12, which is Wyndham Road, Camberwell, letting of the underground former garage space. Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report that brings forward a proposal for a long-term lease agreement of former garage spaces under 3 blocks on the Wyndham estate. I think worth highlighting that the council's commercial property portfolio provides a critical source of funding that supports the delivery of other services across the borough, and this is a proposal which will support that. It's also one with a closed report, and the details of the agreement are in there. But it's worth mentioning about the space that it's currently not in use. It's in a poor condition. There's structural limitations, specifically the height restrictions that prevent its current use for parking. There's also been a reported risk of antisocial behaviour given the vacant space. There is quite substantial investment required to make the spaces suitable for any occupation, and the space is also held under the housing revenue account. And given the significant financial pressures that we know the HRA is facing, this proposal recommends leasing the space to a tenant who will invest their own capital to carry out the necessary refurbishment works, who would then let the space to a provider to operate the space. Essentially, it would the approach means that we're bringing an unused area back into use, and it will create a sustainable revenue stream for HRA.
Steve, Mark, anything you wish?
I'm just really going to comment on self-storage, actually, more generally. Some research being shared by one of the self-storage operators, in that I'd always assumed, to be honest, self-storage was used Christmas tree and your bike there you never use. But in fact, the majority of the self-storage units are actually occupied by small businesses, using them to help operate their business and provide additional requirements to actually store goods and also put them in. So it's just general feedback on self-storage. It's not necessarily what I thought it was. It does have some wider economic impacts on what local business.
Thank you. Mark.
And just very briefly, the proposed tenants also worked closely with the residents on the estate as well, and engaged with them and consulted with them. And obviously, they'll be entitled to a discounted rate should they wish to take on some storage as well.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Much welcome income into the HRA. So are we happy? We're going to agree the recommendations in closed session when we see the open report. So thanks very much. So agenda item 13 is a gateway 2. It's the integrated section and reproductive health services contract. and Councillor Coates.
Thank you. So this report is asking Cabinet's award contractor Guy's and St Thomas's Foundation to deliver an integrated sexual and reproductive health service to our population. We talked about sexual health. Sexual health reports have come to Cabinet for a number of years, and we've always talked about the high sexual and reproductive health needs in Southwark. But one thing we do well is testing, and obviously that highlights a number of things that we need to address. I want to read that UXA has now released 2024 data on HIV in England. I think it's interesting read of why we need to invest more into this area. So there are 70 new diagnoses in Southwark of HIV, I believe per year. And this is high. However, this is down from 93, which was in 2023. So it is steadily decreasing. The borough has the 9th highest rates of new diagnosis in England and London. HIV testing in the borough, however, continues to increase. Excuse me. With 42,000 tests in 2024. This is the highest number delivered to date and the 3rd highest testing rate in England and London. Over 4,400 people in the borough have initiated or continue to use the of PrEP in 2024. This is the 3rd largest number of people using PrEP in England and London. So though we are concerned that we have a high level of sexual health needs, we are doing excellent with engaging our communities, and I think we need to do more, mainly because of a high level of needs that we still have in the borough. But I'm very proud to say that the work that we are doing seems to be being embedded, and is taking shape. So I'm really proud of that. And so we are investing an extra 1 million each year to the sexual health service to make sure that we continue to drill down and improve on our sexual health needs within the borough. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, afternoon Cabinet. I'm Russell Jones. Sure, I'm Russell Jones. I'm the Assistant Director for Integrated Commissioning.
Sangeet Sleehy, Director of Public Health.
No, I think that's a good introduction, Councillor Okota. I think really excitingly, the new investment is going to allow things like a new women's health clinic, which will be at Harold Moody Health Centre, and a real focus on sort of tackling those inequalities that Councillor Okota talked about.
Thank you. Any questions?
It's not really a question. First, it's praise. It's wonderful work that you guys are doing around HIV. This borough has actually been historically very good with dealing with residents who have HIV and supporting them not just through the NHS but support workers and the community work that you guys have been doing. It like for the last 20 years, I've known it personally due to family. Due to family issues. So I just wanted to thank you guys for the historic and the continuous work that you guys are doing with our residents who suffer with HIV and making sure that it's not a stigma. So the kind of work that you guys have done have actually given them the confidence to be proud of who they are and not let a disease and a virus essentially be their personality. So it's really, really good about the integrity that you have given our residents. And with that said, I want to know how my portfolio can basically help to continue that community work that you guys are doing, especially with young people. If we're going to be tackling sexual health needs, we need to make sure that young people are involved. We've got a good system with our Positive Futures Fund where we actually fund certain organisations where these conversations need to be happening. So it will be really good to see how we can work together going forward. So please, if you guys can get in touch so that we can make sure that the money that we've invested, one, is projected out there, let people know about the kind of work that we're doing, and just continue to do good work together in every part of our council. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. So we now move on to consider the recommendations. Are we all in agreement to the recommendation on page 123? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the end of our open session. And from this point on, we'd just like to ask any of the press or the public who may be here to leave. I need to formally So I need to formally move the motion to exclude the press and public. That the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in category 3 of paragraph 10.4 of the Access to Information Procedure Rules of the Southwark Constitution. Is that agreed? Thank you. And is the live stream turned off? It's off. Thank you very much. Okay, so